Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's live stream. Today we're going to be talking about the Mandela Effect, a topic that I've put off for quite some time to discuss, mostly because I recognized the seriousness of the topic, of the effect itself, of what's happening. So in this video, before we begin, I want to make two things perfectly clear. One, I'm not going to be presenting a million examples of the Mandela Effect. There are thousands of them, and the odds are, if you're watching this video, you have already seen plenty of examples. I will tell you what the Mandela Effect is, and give a couple of examples, and then we're going to get into the serious aspect of it. What is it? Where does it come from? The second thing that I want to make very clear is that I will be giving you some spoilers for the book series called The Sword of Truth. So if you're reading The Sword of Truth, I'm going to be talking about some aspects of this particular book when it gets into about the 7th or 8th book in the series. So, with that being said, welcome everyone to the live stream. If you're watching this later on after it's been recorded, welcome to you as well. So, this is a very serious topic for me. This is a very important topic for me. It's kind of sad for me personally to have seen the concept of the Mandela Effect turn into some sort of an amusement for people, some sort of entertainment or, topic of discussion at the dinner table or whatever it may be. There is a lot of stuff behind the Mandela Effect. So let's go ahead and jump right into it yet. I've got a few notes off to the side, so I'll be referencing those notes. Why haven't I done a video yet on the Mandela Effect? I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I've talked about it a couple of times, but when these revelations come to light, on my path, as I grow, I've learned that it's very important to, when you discover something new, when you come across some new information that has the potential to change your perception of reality, that it's a wise idea to take your time with it, to research it, to study it, to experience it a few times before jumping right in. I always caution people not to dive into the shallow end just because you're happy to be at the pool, but to take your time and let things marinate, go slow. So, let me go ahead and give a brief breakdown of what the Mandela Effect is. Basically, the Mandela Effect is the phenomena of a large group, a large population of people in the world who remember various events or phrases or logos or things that are established as a part of our history. They remember them as being something different entirely, as if it were an alternative reality. And now that reality has changed. So let me give you some examples, and then we'll talk about the popular theories about things that people have brought up of what they think that it is. And then, of course, I'll tell you what I believe that it is. So some examples, some of my personal favorite examples are the Berenstain Bears, the spelling of Berenstain. Now it's Berenstain. That was the main example that really got my attention because I am a wordsmith and I am very much and have always been into the spelling of words, where words come from. I learned I before E and all of that right around the time when the Berenstain Bears were very popular, and I knew the spelling of it because I had questioned it so many times and I had tried to teach myself how it was spelled. Another one is the movie The Matrix, a very highly esoteric movie that has the popular line from Morpheus when he's talking to Neo, and he says, "What if I told you that everything you know is a lie?" In the movie now, Morpheus doesn't say that at all, even though there are plenty of memes all over the internet that use Morpheus as the picture and that says, "What if I told you?" Another one are the scene in The Wizard of Oz where the witch says, "Fly, my pretties," and she sort of shoos out her flying monkeys. She doesn't say that in the movie anymore. The girl with the braces in the 007 movies, Dolly, she's supposed to have braces. She has always had braces, and everyone remembers that she had braces, and that's why the scene in the movie made sense when she smiles at the bad guy named Jaws, who has metal teeth. Another one is Queen, the band Queen, singing "We Are the Champions." At the end of that song, my entire life, when that song is played, at the very end they said, "We are the champions," and then there's dun dun dun, and then they all say, "Of the world," and they no longer say that. That's not even on any of their music. And last but not least, and like I said, these are just a few examples so that we can move on. The yellow sun. The sun was yellow when I was a kid, when I was growing up. Not pure yellow, but it had a yellow tint to it, and now it doesn't. Now it's white. And I believe that there are some reasons for all of these things. Let's go ahead and talk about the various theories that people have postulated and come up with to explain the Mandela Effect. So, these are in no particular order. The first one are the theories about merging dimensions. Okay, so basically the theory goes that there are alternative dimensions, that there are alternative planes of existence, parallel universes, if you will, and that they have somehow collided. That our version of reality has collided with another version of reality, and somehow they became mixed up in the process. I like that theory. However, whenever I start questioning it and trying to reason things out, there's a few holes in it. Mostly, the Mandela Effect right now, over the past couple of years, seems to affect a lot of really small or contrite or seemingly insignificant things. For example, logos. All of these different logos have changed, ever so slightly, or in a big way. But if it were merging dimensions, I would fully expect it to be equal as far as the various changes that we see. Not only would it change the small things like logos or phrases from movies, but I would expect to see very large events in history having their slight changes as well. Popular people, popular events, and things of that nature. I'm not saying that theory is wrong. I'm just saying that it doesn't resonate as strongly as what I've come up with. The other theory is time travel. A lot of people have speculated that our government has the ability or figured out how to travel back in time, and when they went back into time, that they manipulated history itself, the sequence of events, and because of those small ripples that were made in the past, that the future itself, our present, has now changed. Also, I would expect those changes to affect other things as well, not the small things that we see. And I'm not saying there are not large Mandela effects, but for the most part, a lot of them are seemingly insignificant, very small things, subtle things like colors changing, logos changing, words changing around in songs, things like that. Another popular theory is that CERN has ripped some sort of a hole into our space-time continuum. They've ripped some sort of a hole or window opening up into another dimension, and so that's having an effect on our reality. While I absolutely do not dismiss CERN as being up to some very sneaky, esoteric things, and I have my own theories about CERN and what they're up to as well, but that's for an entirely different video. I'm not so sure that I would blame the Mandela Effect all on CERN or the agenda that the governments of the world have in basically trying to open up windows into alternative dimensions in order to allow otherworldly entities to enter into our world. Although I do believe that there is a lot of truth to that, I'm not sure it's entirely responsible for what has been known as the Mandela Effect. And then, of course, we've got simulation theory. Simulation theory basically says that our entire reality as we know it is simply a simulation. That nothing is entirely real, but it's very much like you and I have been sucked into a video game, for example. I like to call it video game theory. So in the simulation theory, there are overlords, there are the beings who live and exist outside of the simulation, outside of the video game. They would be much like active participants who are also the designers, and they have the ability to manipulate the game as it is currently being played. They can jump into it, and they can switch things around, and they can manipulate it. I think that theory is probably a little closer to the truth than the other ones have been. Of course, some people speculated that Y2K had something to do with the advent of the Mandela Effect. I'm not a huge Y2K fan. I don't think that was really as big of a deal as people made it out to be. And then, of course, there are those that believe that the end of the world did happen in the year 2012, as was supposedly predicted by the Mayan calendar. Now, I like the Mayan calendar idea. I like where everyone went with that idea. But personally, according to my studies throughout the last few years, I have found that the calculations that were made about the end of the world or the apocalypse or revelation using the Mayan calendar was lacking a few alternative sources of information that were pertinent to coming up with the correct date. Okay, that's also an entirely different subject. Perhaps I will share my thoughts with that sometime in the future. So, those are some of the more popular theories on what the Mandela Effect is. Now, let's get into what I believe that the Mandela Effect is. This comes after a couple of years of experience and study and research. I have come to believe that this world that we live in, that this is a fantasy world. For example, when you go to the movies and you watch a fantasy movie, or you read a book that's fictional, or you see sci-fi on the television, that those things are given to us. Basically, our reality is being fed back to us as entertainment, amusement, and wishes. Wishes being things that look nice and would be really nice if they actually happened, but subconsciously we sort of accept the fact that they're never going to happen, that they're not real. I absolutely believe, and that's where I am on my path now, that our world is a fantasy world. Okay? So when I say fantasy, I'm talking about things like the existence and reality of magic, of giants, titans, gods, elves, all of those types of things that you normally would associate with the concept of fantasy. We have been conditioned. They don't come directly out and say, hey, fantasy's all a lie, it's all fake, but they allow us to assume that it is. And when we assume that fantasy is all fake, not attainable, not achievable, and not active in the lives, in our realm that we live on now, then we give up on it. We let it go. This is something that they place the idea in front of us, and because of who we are, and because of the power that is latent inside of us, the potential that we have, we are the ones that use our thoughts, which are very powerful, which are energetic and basically magic. We are the ones that believe in it. We are the ones who have changed our perception. And I'm going to get into a lot more detail about that as we go forward. But our reality is being fed back to us as purely entertainment. They're taking what is actually real and they're saying, here you go, watch this for amusement. Watch this for something that you wish you could do or you wish you could be, but you're going to tell yourself that you know you cannot be that. You know you can't experience that. You know you can't achieve that. So go ahead and watch the movie or read the book so that you can vicariously live through the protagonist or through one of the main characters. But keep in mind, you'll never really be able to do it. I don't believe that. I see the truth in what is handed right back to us. You see, I understand, and I have been keeping track of the powers that be temporarily and their methods. And while I don't agree with their methods, and while I know that there are a lot of immoral questions when it comes to the things that they have done over the past few thousand years, I do recognize patterns in the things that they have done. I do see the little pieces of evidence. I call them breadcrumbs. I can see the little puzzle pieces, and we can take those puzzle pieces and put them back together to create and sort of recreate the picture of the truth, the reality of ourselves and our realm that we live on. This is a magical place. Now, when I say magic, I'm not talking about fanciful. I'm not talking about, just as it's portrayed in a very cartoonified way, pixies with little wands with dust and that type of magic. I'm talking about real magic that has a reality behind it, and we are living within a very magical place. And it once was common knowledge. It once was widely accepted and known it was known that we lived in a magical world and that we are beings that are full of power or magic. We are able to manipulate energy. So if you've never heard me talk about magic before, and if that word is a trigger word for you, go ahead and replace magic with the manipulation of energy, okay? With the manipulation of vibrations or potential becoming actual. That's what magic is, basically. Okay, so I'm just going over some notes real quick. So, we live in a magical world. Now, that being established and known, I believe that we are also living in a time that many people are dubbing the awakening. We live in a time where a lot of concepts, a lot of truths, a lot of breadcrumbs are manifesting and just rising to the surface. Some people latch on to one or two of those breadcrumbs and they go with it and they get very excited about it. But the reality is, what we are presented as the reality of our situation, the reality of the realm that we live on, and the reality of who we are, it's all unraveling. Everything is coming apart. Something that was a well-oiled system and machine is starting to break up. And the reason behind why it's breaking up has everything to do with many of you out there, many of the individuals out there who are experiencing this awakening process. So I'm going to be a little more direct and to the point for the rest of this video, because I'm really going to just talk about exactly what I believe it is. So what are we dealing with? When it comes to the Mandela Effect, like I said, you have an entire population of people that clearly remember that something happened this way, but whenever we go to check it out, it's not like that anymore. We are dealing with a problem of memory. That's what it is. We are remembering things differently than what we are experiencing now. It is an issue of memory. Now, this concept of memory and the problem of us being so forgetful has resurfaced time and time and time again in my personal walk, in my studies and research on the path that I'm on. I keep coming across this concept of forgetfulness, that we just tend to forget so many things. Don't you think that we would remember so much more given that we have this central processing unit called a brain and that it's constantly recording all of these things, we can't remember our early childhood for the most part. We can't remember, what we did 3.5 weeks ago, what we were doing, unless these events that happen are significant enough to have an impact. Then all of a sudden they leave a little niche in our mind and we go, oh, I remember that particular event, and then I can base other events around that particular event, which is also how we keep track of time. We keep track of time according to significant spikes in history, when interesting things have happened, when things have happened that are out of the ordinary, not the mundane, but the unexpected, the awesome, and things that are vastly different from our daily lives. So, we're dealing with a problem of memory, okay? Keeping that in mind, let's move forward a little bit. There is a psychological condition known as psychological scotoma. Now, if you want to know more about psychological scotoma, I did an entire video on it entitled Psychological Scotoma, so feel free to check that out after this video or when you have time. But in a nutshell, psychological scotoma is a mental condition. It's a condition of your brain where a person is actually blind to things that are apparent, things that are obvious, and things that are right there in front of them. They could walk past a particular object or person. It doesn't always have to be physical, but they can walk right past something and their mind erases it. Their mind, it's like a blind spot. It's an active blind spot that is focused on a particular topic or a particular subject or a particular item, okay? Your mind is able to do that. Your brain, I should say. Your brain is able to do that. And I'm going to tell you why that happens and how it happens as well. So, keep this in mind because it's all going to come together as we move forward, okay? We're dealing with a problem of memory and the solution of remembering, right? So if we're forgetting, then the solution is to remember, right? That's where the Mandela Effect comes into play, because we are not supposed to remember the things that are different. We're not supposed to remember this, and yet some of us are, and I've got a few really good examples of this as well. Actually, I'll go ahead and just give one of the examples just in case I forget. If you've ever seen the movie Dark City, it's a movie I think that was made in the 90s, but basically humanity lives on this spaceship and they believe that it's Earth. They believe that they live on Earth and it's perpetual darkness all the time. And on this spaceship, there are these aliens that during the night, they make everybody go to sleep. And then they take a syringe and they inject everyone, they inject some people with an entirely different set of memories. Now, when the people wake up, they don't realize that they've been injected with a different set of memories, and so they act out their new persona. They act out and they remember what has been injected into their physical brain. Some people, one person in particular in the movie, he's immune to this. They're not able to change it up, and he starts realizing something's wrong, something's out of place, something is different. For whatever reason, perhaps it's just time. I think in the movie they actually say you're bound to have an anomaly. Okay, nothing is perfect. Nothing works out perfectly. So even though you have this perfect situation where you are having everyone forget the truth, there will be anomalies. Some people will wake up. Some people will start to say, hey, something's wrong with the world that we live in. Something's wrong with me. I can't put my finger on it, but sometimes those people, they don't dismiss it. It's kind of like when you have deja vu. When you have deja vu, many of you go, oh my God, I'm having deja vu. Oh, this is so weird. And then you kind of want it to go away, right? And then it goes away, and then you don't think twice about it. You don't give it a second thought. Oh, that was weird. That was deja vu, But just like in the movie The Matrix, the main character Neo, he experiences deja vu, and he goes, oh, that was weird, right? Just dismissing the experience. Now, all of the people in the movie who were awake, they said, whoa, stop, talk to us about that. Let's focus on that because that's important, right? That's exactly what we need to start doing. There are tools available to us to amplify these situations so that we can recognize them and perceive them and get to understand why they are happening to us. So, just a little side suggestion from me to you is the next time you have deja vu, don't try to get rid of it. Dwell in it, allow it to happen, experience it, and that way you're going to remember it and it's going to be all the more powerful. Realize that something important is happening in your life and don't allow it to just dissipate like a dream. You know, you wake up from your dream and we're almost taught by the rest of the world to just forget about your dream and go about living the rest of your day. Your dream state is very important. It's always been important. Dreams have been crucial and the crux of changing history. Ancient civilizations held dreams in the most highest of regard. But today, we don't do that anymore. Because we've been brought up and conditioned and hypnotized into thinking that dreams are just like watching a movie. It's all fantasy. It's all gibberish. It doesn't make any sense and it doesn't really mean anything. Just like the movie, just like the book, just like your deja vu. I'm telling you the opposite. All of those things are very important. They are significant and they are happening because of something that has the same weight to it. Okay? Okay, so let me move forward. So we're dealing with a problem of memory. There is the issue of psychological scotoma, where a person's brain can physically erase something from existence. A person won't recognize it, they won't understand it, they won't know it. Even if they hear about it, let's say it's a topic that has been erased from existence, for that person, right? Even if they hear about the topic, their brain will acknowledge it. Oh yeah, okay. And then it's gone. It's totally gone. That's why you can talk. So many of you who are awake or waking up or experiencing these types of things, when you talk to your average person, okay, when you talk to those people who are not experiencing this type of awakening and they don't see it as being a significant thing like you do, the reason, I believe, is because there is this sort of magic spell. There's this psychological scotoma that's just erasing it. The moment that you talk about it, they're not hearing it. Their mind is immediately erasing it. It's being deleted from existence in that person's reality. And then they continue on. You know, so that might help to hopefully alleviate some of the frustration that you're experiencing. Now, there are ways to help those people out. There are ways to help them so that there are things that can be done so that it's more difficult for them to forget about it. It's more difficult for them to not acknowledge it. And there are ways to be able to sort of allow those subjects or those physical things to kind of appear quickly like a ghost in their life, okay? They would maybe see it a little bit longer than they used to. And those are small baby steps that they need to take in order to recognize and come to terms with the reality of what's happening. So, because we're dealing with the topic of forgetting something, I want to talk about the moon, okay? The moon, in my research, is a huge suspect when it comes to this concept of this heavy veil. A veil is like a curtain, okay? There is this curtain of what the Hindu texts refer to as Maya, okay? It is a strong, heavy forgetfulness. It's like a fog. It's like a cloud, okay? And it's basically this cloud that comes over. Sometimes you may experience this heavy fog of forgetfulness. Say you've ever walked into the kitchen and you can't remember why you went in there. Or sometimes you just feel like blah, you know? Like you don't remember what you were going to do today. You don't remember, what your plans were. And, you can't remember much. You don't have much purpose at that very moment. And it's because this heavy fog of forgetfulness comes over us and shrouds our ability to think clearly, okay? The same shroud of forgetfulness is very heavy upon us at birth, which is why so many people can't remember being born. They can't remember the first 2 or 3 years of their life, really, except for those significant spikes in time, right? Like we were talking about. So the moon has come up time and time again in my own research. I remember one time I was researching the moon and how it seems to have an effect on our forgetfulness. And then I started watching a Doctor Who episode. I was introduced to Doctor Who by many of you who recommended it. I started watching Doctor Who from the very beginning. I watched every single episode. And then the same day that I was studying the moon and forgetfulness, there was an episode of Doctor Who that was all about these characters that could not remember who they were. They could not remember where they were. They were just sort of all of a sudden in this world, and they kind of accepted it, and they kind of went about this routine, but there was something off about all of it. And there was this character named Dr. Moon who kept showing up, and he kept telling the characters, forget. And he kept telling them to forget. Well, later on in the real world, apart from this fantasy world that was created, Doctor Who looks up through this he's inside of this huge library. He looks up through this sort of hole in the roof, and he sees the moon. Okay, there are a lot of symbolism pertaining to the moon and how it seems to be used to amplify this condition that we have of a strong forgetfulness. Essentially, we as humanity are suffering or have been suffering from collective amnesia. It's a cultural amnesia for all mankind. Everybody is experiencing it, but nobody has realized it. Why don't we realize it? Because we're forgetting about it. How can you realize something that you have forgotten? Also, in Doctor Who, there's this race of aliens, and they have this power that whenever you look at them, you know that they exist, you know that they're there, but the moment you look away from them, you forget that they ever were even there. You forget the encounter you had with them, and therefore those alien beings in that episode, in Doctor Who, they can basically do anything they want to manipulate mankind, because the moment mankind stops focusing, the moment mankind stops looking at it and giving energy and attention to what it is, which in the television show are these aliens, and the moment we look away or become distracted, then we immediately forget about it. That haze falls over us, that cloud, that veil of forgetfulness. It falls all over us. It wraps us up and we forget about it. That's why so many of you've gone to the movies. You've watched something powerful. You've watched something that brought tears to your eyes, something that had your heart beating in your chest, and you felt alive, and you weren't exactly sure why. You're living in the movie. The movie is speaking to you. It's speaking to your subconscious. It's speaking to your DNA. It's speaking to your spirit memory. And I'm going to talk about spirit memory here in just a minute. And the movie is reminding you of who you are. The movie is reminding you of the real reality. The movie is telling you this is true. This is reality. These things are accurate. Now, yes, the movie may be told, embellished here or there, or it's told in story forms, or names have changed, but the premise behind fantasy, the premise behind sci-fi and all these types of things that we don't consider to be real, those things get our hearts pumping. Those things get us excited. Those things make us cry. Why? Not because they're fake, not because they're lies, but because they're real. And you know that they're real. You acknowledge the reality when you get so invested in what's happening in the movie. You are like Bastian in if you've ever seen The Never-Ending Story. Bastian is just reading a book. Okay, so let me just give you a little side note. Okay, there's a movie called The Never-Ending Story. It was very popular when I was a kid, and it's about this kid, just an average kid. He's sort of a black sheep, he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, kind of a dork, kind of nerdy. He goes to this bookstore because he's hiding from these bullies, right? These just numbskull, base bullies that are chasing him and they want to beat him up. Bastian hides in the bookstore. Well, the librarian, the bookstore owner, starts talking to him, and he sees the Never-Ending Story book. And he's like, hey, what's that book about? And the guy tells him, that book is not like any book you've ever read. You see, your books are safe. You read your books and you're excited, and you're there with Captain Nemo, and you're there with Neo, you're there with whoever you're reading about. You're reading it, but it's a safe book because you put it down, because you know and you keep in mind that it's not real. This book, this never-ending story, is not like those books. This book is a dangerous book. So, that absolutely relates to our reality. The world you are living in right now is the never-ending story, okay? This is a chapter. This is a part of a fantastic series of events. This part is a very strange part. It's so much different than the other parts that have happened, but it's another chapter in the story, okay? When you go to the movies, your movies are safe. Your books are safe. Your TV shows are safe. They're safe because you've convinced yourself that they're not real. You can walk away from the movie and you're no longer a part of it. But I'm telling you that you are. All of those things, okay? Now, I'm not saying all movies are 100% accurate and historical, etc. But you know what I'm telling you? That there is truth in those movies, in those books. So the thing in the Never-Ending Story is he says your movies, your books, your YouTube videos, they're safe. Why are they safe? Because some of you are watching right now and you're like, wow, whoo, man, this is serious. Like, I feel something. I feel that I'm resonating with something. But then some of you, when the credits roll and I'm not here anymore doing this video, some of you just move on to the next one. Some of you just go about your daily life and you think, wow, that was cool. Wow, that was interesting. That was entertaining. That was amusing. That was deep. That was awesome. But then you forget about it. And you get sucked back into what they call reality. Okay? Reality is being presented to you as if it's different from the world that you just came from. So, I feel like the moon plays a huge part. I don't know if you know this, but the moon produces cold light. I've done my own experiments. Thousands of other people have done their experiments. The moon produces cold light, right? Now, hot light gives energy. Cold light takes the energy away. So if it's true that the moon is producing cold light, and if you've never heard of this, go ahead and do this experiment. You can take a sensitive thermometer, put it in the direct light of the full moon, and then take the temperature, and then take the same thermometer and just put it in the shade of the moonlight. The shade of the moonlight will be hotter than the direct light from the moon. The direct light from the moon will be colder than it is in the shade. And that's because the moon is sucking up into it. It's taking away, okay? It's pulling into it. This is why a lot of people talk about the moon as being a part of our construct of reincarnation. That when people see this white light when they die, that they're actually going into the moon. That's a different subject, so I'm not going to discuss that right now. What I am going to talk about is the concept of memory. Now, I've given you some examples of what the Mandela Effect is. We've talked about various theories, popular theories that other people have come up with as far as the Mandela Effect. I've established that I believe that we are dealing with a memory problem, okay? That there is something called psychological scotoma, where your brain can erase something. Your brain can create blind spots all around you, whether it be a topic or a physical thing or a person. The moon has something to do with all of this. The moon reappears time and time again when it comes to people acting different, people acting strange, people forgetting things. And then, of course, there's the example of the movie Dark City. There are so many other examples of this. I'm sure you all can think of many on your own. Dark City and the L, okay? In the movie Dark City, there's these aliens. I call them the L, okay? I've done a lot of videos about the L. I call them the elves. They are the Elu, the elves, the Alf, those from Alfheim, etc., and so on and so forth. The Elohim, the gods, whatever you would like to call them. They existed. They pre-existed humanity, according to these traditions and writings, and even many of the stories that are given to us. The El are real. They existed and they still exist today. Now, they're not out in numbers. You don't have a lot of experience with them, or maybe you do, but just like in Doctor Who, you don't remember. But that's an entirely different topic. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you exactly what I believe the Mandela Effect is. And this is the part in the video where I'm going to talk about the book, The Sword of Truth, because I believe that that's not a story, that that's a historical record, okay? Now, it is written in story form, just like all of the best truths are. But in the book, there is a spell called the Chainfire spell. And the Chainfire spell in the book. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on what's happened, okay? This is very important. In the book, you have your main characters, and there is, the world has been split. There are those who hate magic. They want nothing to do with magic, and so they have erected these borders to separate the world. People that don't want magic, they live on that side of the border. People that do want magic, they live in a very magical world. And they don't typically interact with one another, okay? They're very biased. You know, the people that don't like magic, they want nothing to do with it. It's a ridiculous concept. They're just living here and now in what they term to be reality. But in the same realm, in this book, on the other side of the border, there are these magical beings. Everything is magic. And those beings that live there know that magic is everywhere. And they acknowledge it and they use it. And they don't fear it. Okay? A movement is created by this army to destroy all magic. They start getting everybody pumped up. There are these basically SWAT teams. There are these little militia groups that pop up all over the place, and they actually go out to say, we need to eradicate all magic. We need to get rid of it, including taking out all of those people that practice magic. Is this starting to sound a little bit familiar? I mean, familiar in our historical record. Can you think of any time in our history where little factions or groups have set out to kill people who practice magic? I'm sure you can, because that has happened. It is continuously happening. So, in the book, there is a prehistory, right? The prehistory is hinted at time and time again. Okay, the book will hint at prehistory that has happened thousands and thousands of years ago, and it talks about this great war between the ancient wizards. Now, there's wizards in the present time in the book, okay? But those wizards, even though they're very powerful, they're nothing at all, nothing in comparison to the ancient wizards that lived a long time ago. And when the book talks about this ancient prehistory, it was a world inundated with magic. And there were these wizards that absolutely could do things that were mind-blowing, even to the wizards in the present day in the book. This parallels our reality, our history, and the world that we live in today. Magic is real. It exists in our world today. I'm gonna make this all make sense here in just a moment. So, those ancient wizards warred with one another. Now, replace the word wizard with gods. Replace the word wizards with the elite, or the ruling class, or the giants, or the titans of old, whatever you would like to, okay? The ancient wizards warred with one another. This is the same theme that we see throughout every single historical record, all of the myths, all of the legends, from the Vedas and the Eddas, the Mahabharata, to the Bible itself, the Quran, all of these different books hint at this war between the demons and the angels, the good guys and the bad guys, the Azir and the Vanir, all of these descriptions that are various amongst the various cultures. They have this common theme. And in the book, it's these ancient wizards. They went to war with one another. Their magic was unimaginable. Even in the book, even to the wizards that existed in present day in the book, they couldn't even figure out how the ancient wizards did much of what they did. Well, in the book, those ancient wizards, they created the spell. Spells were nothing, they had spells all the time, but some spells were so powerful and so controversial that even though they were created, even though they were written down, even though they were manifested, they were not enacted. They didn't perform the spell because they had decided this is way too powerful. We don't know what the ramifications of this spell will be in the long term. And that's another problem that we have today. We don't think about the long term. The ruling class is intelligent enough to consider the long term, but not us, not your average people on the street, not your human beings that live for a mere 50 to 70 years. That's not a lot of time. And so what happens? We're impatient. We just want to live here, now, right now. We don't think about the patience that we need to allow things to marinate, to wait upon things so that we can achieve a desired result far off into the future. I believe that there are the people that we are slaves to in our day and age today, that they know this type of stuff and they use it. They are the wizards of old, or at least the descendants of the wizards of old. So let me get right to the point. Let me be direct with you. A spell was created, known in the book as the chainfire spell. Now, pay attention to this part. This is exactly what it is in the book. The chainfire spell was a spell that would be cast upon a particular subject. Okay? So let's say it's a person. Let's say it's me. Let's say that the chainfire spell, I was the recipient of it. I was the focus of that spell. That entire spell is designed to have everybody forget about me. Even though I exist, even though I'm here and I know I'm alive and, all of this, everyone who comes in contact with me wouldn't even see me. It's not that they wouldn't recognize me, it's that I would be invisible to them. Their brain is affected by this spell, and it literally, the moment that they see me, it is deleted from the brain, from the computer that runs this body. It's deleted. Now, if this is the synapse in my brain, right? And right here in the middle is me, okay? And the synapse is running from this way to this way. And this is me in the middle, right? If you remove me, now you have a space. And the synapse needs to connect. So what the brain does, because it's creative, is it creates something in that space. Where something is missing, it manifests something that will make sense of it. It basically makes up something to replace what's missing. Okay? So the chainfire spell is directed at a person or a subject, and that subject or person is deleted from everybody's memory. Now, the reason it's called chainfire is because there's a problem with it. It's not as simple as, let's say that the spell was directed at JayDreamerZ, all of you forget about me entirely, right? But I've had ripples in the world. I've left my mark on the world. And whenever a person encounters that mark that I've left, those marks need to be erased as well, because there can be no evidence pointing towards me existing. I hope you're following me. So not only does the spell erase from the minds of the people the object, the subject of the spell, but he also attempts to erase any contact that object has had with anything else. So for example, let's say I wrote a book, right? My book, the writing in my book would disappear. okay? If I was playing basketball with a group of people, they would not remember me being there. Their mind would fill in the gap with something else. So the chainfire spell is causing people to forget the subject and anything that the subject touches, anything that it comes into contact with. This is directly related, I believe, to the Mandela Effect. Okay? The Mandela Effect is not about the forgetting. The forgetting happens all the time. Forgetting has nothing to do with the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect is it is the residual effect of that spell. It has to do with those anomalies that I was talking about earlier. If you are a person who has, experienced deja vu, or you've seen Mandela effects that you strongly are like, wow, that's a huge one, It has more to do with you remembering the reality, okay? You're remembering something that they don't want you to remember, okay? All of these little things are kind of disappearing and being manipulated and replaced. Remember, there's a hole, there's a gap in your mind, and so your brain makes sense of it by replacing it, okay? So, we are remembering, but it's not a physical remembering. It's not your brain that is remembering something. That's where it comes to spirit memory. I was talking about spirit memory in some of my other videos. Your soul, your spirit has its own memory that it takes with it, okay? And on occasion, you may have glimpses of that memory. You're not supposed to remember everything. That's a part of the system. That's a part of the way that we designed it, that we made it to be, okay? But it's to an extreme degree now, all right? So your soul, your spirit carries with it memory. That's why so many of you have this sort of vague feeling about some sort of a past life or some sort of an experience that you may have had that you haven't had in this life. That's a part of your spirit memory, okay? And it's a different subject, but that has a lot to do with why in ancient times, the ruling class of Atlantis and Egypt and some other places, they could transfer spirit from one body to another body and in essence live forever, but they would keep their spirit memory. They would remember all of their experiences that they just had. They wouldn't lose them. They wouldn't forget them. Okay? So it's this spirit memory. Your spirit, something in you, your essence is recognizing something is missing. Something is off. And it's not just affecting logos. It's not just affecting famous lines in movies. But it's making appearances all over the place. And I believe it's because that spell that has been cast, there was a war a long time ago amongst the gods. And the gods basically know how to perform magic. They understand magic. They are magical beings. And as a part of that magic, they used magic as a weapon against one another, of course. Right? So, as a part of this magic, they decided to destroy all of the things that had happened. They decided to cause cataclysms that would renew the world, that everything would start over. As a part of sort of the finishing touch on their victory of destroying, their enemy, and by extension destroying most of the world as it was known at the time, they needed to make sure that people didn't remember. That way, there was no chance of it reoccurring. There was no chance of it happening again. There was no chance of their enemies rising back up or whatnot, okay? Because of reincarnation, you know what I mean? People coming back and people remembering, hey, oh, wait a minute, I remember you. We have problems. We have problems together, right? And so all of this is basically magic. And it's the manipulation of a core energy, the subject of the magic spell. It's a manipulation of core energy, connecting energy that changes the perceived world. Or, as Doctor Who calls it, it is a perception filter. Just like you can put a filter on the video right now, and what you perceive isn't really what's there, right? This all right here, what you see is not really there, and you know it's not really there, but you accept it as a part of the reality, okay? There is a perception filter in the brain that has been passed down, and it is strengthened and it is augmented because they know that the spell cannot last. The spell falls apart. Everything falls apart. It doesn't last forever, okay? The spell is unraveling, and it's unraveling because of the counter. So, what is the subject of the spell? The subject of the spell, what is tied into so many things, right? What is it? What's the core? What is the root? What is it that happened so long ago that would have a ripple effect on our reality today? Our origins, our beginnings, where we come from. We don't know where we come from. Doesn't that bother you? We as a collective group, as humanity, all the various races of the world, have no idea. Some speculate. There are some truth seekers. There are those trying to figure it out. But by and large, most people have no idea who they are, where they come from, what their purpose is in life. Don't you think that that's mighty suspect? That supposedly, all of these creatures called human beings that hold ourselves in such high regard, we're so much better than all of the animals and plant life, and we're at the very top of the food chain, that we don't even know who we are? That's a red flag. That's a huge siren going off. There should be alarms and bells and whistles going off saying, wait a minute, that should be like the core of you living your life. Of me living I should know who I am. I should know what my purpose is. I should know where I came from, what my origins are. Because if I know my origins, then I can know how I came to the present day. And then I can understand and plan out my reason for being, my purpose, what I'm going to do going forward. Nobody knows that today for the most part. People are happy living in the loop of life, just chasing their tail, going in circles. I'm not happy to do that. I recognize those loops. I don't like them, and I try to break free from those loops as often as I possibly can to condition myself, to get myself into the practice of becoming stronger and exercising my spirit muscles, my mind, my energy, and focusing it and directing it on what I want to see happen, on the life that I want to live. That is magic. And that's something you all can do. But you're struggling with fear. You're struggling with anxiety. You're struggling with doubts. You're struggling with what the world system has given to you on a silver platter. Here, lay back. Don't think. Don't move. Don't act. I'll give you all of your heart's desires. I'll give you the best tasting stuff. I'll give you all of the entertainment. I'll make you laugh. At what cost? That's why this Mandela Effect video is not me being paranoid like so many other Mandela Effect videos I've seen. People get so paranoid. I'm not paranoid because I understand the reality behind it. I'm not ridiculous in my presentation either because it's not a goofy concept to me. It's not a concept that is passing. It's not the topic of the day to me. It is a part of the reality that is unraveling and manifesting in my life. And so I'm sharing that path, and I'm sharing my perception and my awakening with you. Hopefully, because you will resonate with some of it. And when you resonate with it, take what resonates and hold on to it and look at it and focus on it. And don't look away, because the moment that you look away, you will forget about it all over again. Just like you forgot about how you felt when you watched that amazing movie or when you read that book. In order to feel that way again, you need to go revisit the book. You need to go revisit the movie. Your life is safe. Mine's not. Your books are safe. Your movies are safe because you don't believe them. Because you don't realize that you're a part of a never-ending story. You are a part of The story of us all. You are a part of why I'm here right now. Do you think I would be talking to anybody if there weren't all of these people watching and listening right now? Maybe I would for a little bit, but then after a while, it's like talking to myself. You're a part of it. All of the people in the chat room. Where is the chat? Over here? All of these people are a part of it. You are a part of it. Like I say, there is never one moment, one nanosecond in time when you, whatever your name is, whatever your label is, whatever type of clothing you're wearing, whatever you've been through in life, there is never a moment when you are not creating the same ripples in the world. You're making changes. You're having an effect on people you've never met. You're having an effect on the reaction, the domino effect of the lives of other people. Let me give you an example. I go grocery shopping, right? And I see that somebody had left the cart right in the middle of a perfectly good parking space. In that moment in time, I decided to go ahead and remove the cart and put it where it belongs. Somebody else in an alternative branch of reality, right? If time splits off, had I left that cart there, somebody else would have, their life would have changed, right? I would have, their life would have, whatever path they were on would have been extended by that much more time. Or perhaps they were now frustrated. And because they're frustrated, something had happened to somebody else. And now something happens to somebody else, and it goes on and on and on. You are conditioned and taught and lied to that you're insignificant, that your life doesn't matter, that you can't change the world. When you can, you do, you are changing the world. You are making a difference. Don't you know? I mean, so much. There are times I want to cry. I want to cry because people don't realize it. People don't know how powerful they are, And if you all just individually started making change in your life to develop and work on and exercise some courage, to charge forward, to challenge, to be different, to accept the power that you have to change the world. Man, what an amazing thing. Let me get back on topic here. What is the counter? Every spell has its opposite. Every spell has its antidote. Every spell has a counter to it. Something that will nullify the spell. Okay? Something that you can use to defend yourself against it. Because magic's very real, and magic is what hurts people. Magic is what helps people, believe it or not. Okay? The thoughts, the intentions, the ideas, they manifest within an individual. Hey, let me give you an example. So many of you out there, when you desire to do something or to see something done, you say, I want to whatever. I want to go to the store, right? I want to be in shape. I want to be a better person. Want means to lack. You're just admitting I lack those things, which is reinforcing your lacking of those things. Instead, when we ask other people, when we ask them, we say, hey, will you do this? Will you get this done? We're asking them to will it. To will something means to focus on it and to bring it about, to manifest it. So instead of saying, I want to do this, that, or the other thing, start saying, I will this, that, or the other thing. I will to get this done. It is my will to do this. It is my focus. I've already done it. I'm on that path. It's going to manifest. This is reality. That's how it works. And it's very strong if you allow it to be very strong. There is a lot of potential within it. There is a lot of power. Unfortunately, for most people in the world, it's latent power. It's inert. It's impotent. It's just power that's sitting on the shelf. Why not take that power and apply it and use it? Try it out. Practice it from time to time. Take control of your life in the little aspects, the small situations. And I promise you'll start to develop a sense of courage, a sense of confidence in yourself. You'll start to understand more about who you are. You'll start to know yourself so much better. Let's see, what else? What is the counter to the effect? What is the counter to the spell? If the spell is being cast to make us forget, then there must be a counter to it. Now, there is a counter, and many of you are already applying it, and that's why you've seen things like the Mandela Effect. You can't see the Mandela Effect unless you have your hand upon the counter spell. And the counter to the Mandela Effect, the thing that makes us forget, is the truth. It's one of the most powerful forms of magic that there is. Now, I say the truth, and many of you out there automatically thought of a destination. Truth is coming to know something. No, it's not. It's not at all. Truth is a path. Truth is the yellow brick road, if you will. Truth is the path that leads you to revelation. It leads you to growth. Those of you who are walking the path of truth are truth seekers. Not truth finders, you are truth seekers. You are the ones who constantly gain more understanding about yourselves and thus the world around you, because you're connected to the world around you. And those of you who have started upon that path, when you've taken that first step, when you've taken a leap of faith, so to speak, and you trust in your own instincts, you trust in your intuition, you trust in your inner self, in that still small voice in the back of your mind saying, there's something off. Let's find out what it is. There's something not quite right. Let's explore, because we want to know what's happening. We want to understand ourselves. We don't want to forget who we are, right? We will ourselves to remember. We will remember. And so those of you who are on that path, you've probably seen all kinds of Mandela effects. You've probably encountered revelation after revelation after revelation, and sometimes you may have even been overwhelmed by it. You're on the right path, and you're not alone. Many people are. This is happening all over the place. Magic in the form of truth-seeking is the counter to the spell that will make us forget. Will yourself to remember. Start on that path. Take the first step. Walk towards discovery. Walk towards, let go of what you have had. Let go of the path that you were on. Start walking in a new direction. And you'll start to see these things manifest. The spell itself will just start to unravel as you walk the path. Other people, it will hold on tighter to them. The spell will fight for its own existence. And the powers who created the spell will try their hardest to turn it up, to amplify it, right? And thus, because they're amplifying it, the people who are continuously affected by the spell, by the forgetting, they're going to hold on to their version of reality when you and I have already let go. You and I have already ventured into the unknown. We've taken a step into the rabbit hole. We don't forget the world that we just came from. I don't forget it. I don't take this world for granted at all. I recognize that this current place in history, this current part of time on the realm that we live in, and I will continue to call it a realm. It's not a world. It's not a planet. It's not this and that. It is a realm, just like a realm in any fantasy book with its various aspects and peoples and cultures and this and that and the other thing. I do not take this realm the way that it is now for granted. I don't hate it. I respect it. I see that it is what it is. And because I know it's not all that there is, I don't need to forget it. I don't want to forget. Forgetting is how we got into this problem in the first place. Don't forget the world that you live in. Accept it, acknowledge it, give it the respect that it deserves for being what it is. But dive into your creative side. Allow your mind to be balanced. Take the facts of what you are presented with and balance it with your creativity, your imagination. You will start to see this world, this realm as it is now, change. I promise you. That will be an effect. If you allow yourself to think outside of the box and you continuously start to practice, if you trust in your intuition and you go with things. Now, my tip to you is don't jump into things, but go with your inner voice, okay? Allow yourself to trust yourself from time to time. You will start to see this world fall apart. That veil of forgetfulness will fall down. You can start people watching, and instead of humans all being the same, you'll start to see fantasy creatures as opposed to human beings. You see them still, because you haven't let go and forgotten about this reality. You still see them as human beings. And this is just an example. You still see them. You know, you can go to the mall and just look at the cafeteria. I mean, look at the, what do they call it? The eatery, the food palace, or whatever they call it. You can take with you the current perception. You can see human beings. But when you start to allow yourself to create that world in the movie that's known as Fantasia, you'll start to see that they're not what you thought they were. Nothing is what you thought it was. Everything is way better, way more exciting, way more fantastic. And when you start to see that, then it's not such a huge jump to go from our reality living in squares and cubes and boxes with no plants, no forests. They've actually paved paradise and put up a parking lot. They took all of the trees and put them in a tree museum called national parks. You'll start to see these things for what they are, and it's not a far leap to go from this reality that's presented to us as being the only reality to seeing our past and conversely our far future as being realms of fantasy, that the myths, the legends, the stories, the bedtime stories, the children's books, all of the fairy tales as having strong breadcrumbs, strong grains of truth that they have within them, that they are like little puzzle pieces, little pieces of power that you can attain, that you can get. And you can say, wow, you know what? There's truth to these myths, to these legends. And for some reason, my reality that I live in now is trying to make me forget what had happened. It's trying to make me forget who I am, where I came from. And then it allows me to bicker and argue and go to war with other people that have other ideas about it. Because the Elohim, the elven race, they have designed it to be that way. The key component is your creativity. It is the balancing of your imagination. It is the childlike mindset. As a matter of fact, the princess of the entire land in the movie The Neverending Story, she was called the childlike empress. We need to return to a childlike mindset, balancing it out, not to forget about who we are now, not to forget the mindset that we currently have, very analytical and the ends justify the means, very mathematical, very scientific. But we take those tools that have been given to us, and then instead of being imbalanced, we balance it out with our creativity. We balance it out with our ability to create. That's why it's called creative. We balance it out with our thoughts and being focused and aware of what's happening in our bodies, in our minds, in our energy. When we feel off, when there are things that happen like the Mandela Effect or deja vu, or maybe you're just out of it, recognize it, focus on it, and keep it in mind as you go. Something is wrong with the world today. Not wrong, but different. Something is vastly different. And what is happening is those people, those beings are trying to get you and me to forget about our origins, where we came from, who came before us, what the world was once like. And if you want to know more about that, just compare all of the various stories throughout history. Like giants. That's a perfect example. Every culture, everything in all of our historical records, going back for most of time, gives homage to giants. Actual giants, not storybook giants that, like they don't exist. Giants are real. Giants did exist. They did live and walk on our world. They did impact and shape the world that we live in today, and they made huge ripples that affect us today. That's just one example. Fantasy is reality. There is no separation between the two. It's all perception. It is all your perception and the world that you are creating for yourself as you choose to will a particular path before yourself. So the counter to the Mandela Effect, the counter to the chain fire spell, the counter to it is truth seeking. Now in the book, those people who had the sword of truth, right? In the book, they weren't affected by the chain fire spell. Those people who had come in contact with it, they weren't affected. Now, after the chain fire spell had gone into effect, they were affected, but if somebody were to grab the sword of truth after having already been affected, they would no longer be affected from that point going forward. They would still misremember everything that happened before they grabbed the sword of truth, which will also happen in your walk. Once you grab the sword of truth, once you become a truth seeker, then all of a sudden you'll be able to see things in a whole new light. But you're going to have to sort of step up your game in order to realize the other blind spots that you have. And that's one of the most obvious pieces of evidence, is the evidence that is necessary but missing. That piece of evidence where everything looks a little too perfect, something's missing here. Something's out of place because it's not in place, right? That's how you know. People can walk past something and say something seems out of place there. I'll give you an example. Mud fossils, right? I talk about mud fossils all of the time. And it's basically those ancient giants, the ancient world was petrified and turned into stone. Somebody can walk right past a standing stone, a huge stone megalith. They'll just call it a megalith, and that's that. It's just a big rock, 40 feet tall, sticking up into the air in a place that it doesn't belong. They can walk right past it and say, it's just a rock. That's it. They don't see it. They don't see it for what it is. And that's just one example. Let's see. The counter, I'm just going to read my notes. The counter to the spell, right? The antidote to the spell of our forgetfulness, of our condition of not knowing who we are or where we came from, the counter was known by these ancient wizards. Do you think that they were smart enough to create it, but they didn't realize how to fight it? Of course they did. They knew what the counter to it was. They knew how to defeat it, and they knew that that information would be available to you and to me. So they took precautions to make sure that we couldn't discover it. The counter to the spell was known, and attempts were made to suppress the knowledge of the counter to that spell. Another spell was cast that would slowly infect the world. Every generation from that point in time forward would slowly become removed all the more from the reality of magic. Magic itself has slowly been taken away. Truth-seeking is magic. It is a form of magic. It is a magical tool that we have at our disposal. But what they did, what those wizards did, those ancient wizards, the dark wizards, if you will, they decided to cast a secondary spell that would eventually contaminate our minds because they can't force you to forget that magic exists. What they can do is they can plant the idea. You take it into yourself and you think it's your own idea. It's called inception. They plant the idea that this concept of magic is not reliable, that it's not real, that it's fanciful. Just like our idea, our concept of magic today. We think about magic shows and David Blaine and David Copperfield. We think of magic tricks and, I don't know, just doing a magic trick, And the concept of magic has degraded. I think that's the right word. It has dissolved. Magic is still here. It's all over the place. Magic has never gone away. It has never lost its power. It has never disappeared from existence. It's in our own minds that we have decided generation after generation that magic is not for us. We have turned into that part of the realm that hates magic. We don't want anything to do with it. We don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to rely upon it. We don't want to use it, even if it's for good. We want to, as a matter of fact, not just get rid of the magic practicers, but we want to give magic a bad name altogether. And they were very, very successful in their attempts to eradicate the world of magic. But it's not gone, and it never has been. It's only in the minds of the individuals as time moves on that we have started to believe in it, that there's no such thing as magic. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what happens at the end of the book. How does the main character get rid of what's happening? He's got a world where people love magic, but they're being attacked by an overwhelming population that hates magic, and they want to get rid of them. So what the main character does in the book is he uses magic to create two separate dimensions, two different worlds. He separates them. They're an exact copy of one another. But in this new world that he's created, there is no magic. And he gives everyone in the world the opportunity. He says, you can step through this portal and you can go live in your world where there will be no magic, where you will continuously forget about magic until nobody even knows what it was. No one will ever talk about it. No one will ever be reminded of it. Or you can stay in this world where magic will continue to grow and it will go back to what it was. And we will be magical beings in a magical world. So he allows the people to have what they desire. He separates the two. Right now, our world is not separated. Right now, we live in a world where there is a war on magic. There is a war on the manipulation of energy. And those who look into alternative ideas, alternative truths, alternative realities, esoteric and hidden histories, our origins, who we are, and what we are capable of, which is anything. I want to stay in the world of magic. I am a proponent of the fantastic. I am a proponent of a world that doesn't go in circles. I'm a proponent and a believer in a world that is fantastic and amazing every part, every moment. I don't get used to it. I don't take it for granted. But I'm excited to be in the world, and I realize that things are happening right now, at this time, and that I'm a part of that fight. I'm a part of that war. Fantasy is reality. There is no separation between the two. Your reality can be one where you have this veil of forgetfulness and you revel in it and you love it and you bask in it and you're okay with it and you enjoy that reality. You enjoy a world with no dragons, with no elves, with no giants, with no gods, with no wars, with no... I'm talking about like the wizard wars, okay? not our petty little words that we have today. Well, giant trees, huge flora and fauna everywhere, true happiness and peace and contentment. You can live in the world that doesn't have that doesn't acknowledge that says that that's a fantasy, that says that that's a story. It's not real. It's just a story. It's not real. That can be your world. You can read your safe books. You can watch your safe movies. But I will continue living and coexisting in a world where I am an advocate to the advent and the reemerging of magic itself, of realizing the power that exists in all things. There is energy within everything, everywhere, all over the place. We as individuals and collectively have the power to do whatever we want to do, to be whatever we want to be, to experience so many different things. And so that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, making these videos and talking to whoever will listen, is to inspire, to encourage, not to be the commander, not to be the leader, but to be an example and saying, this is what I am doing. And if you feel what I feel, if you sense it, then you can do it too. Fear does not exist. It's what they say in The Karate Kid, right? The Cobra Kai, actually. The bad guys in the movie, they say, fear does not exist in this dojo, does it? And all the students repeat, no, sensei. Well, that's the bad guys saying that. Don't you think that's something we should be saying? Fear does not exist. Fear is something that you have made up. It's a reality that you see as being real that's not yet real. But you've manifested it and set it upon your own path so that you'll eventually experience it. You know? And that fear of the reality that you've created in your mind acts as a roadblock to your own peace and your own happiness. So, to wrap things up, the Mandela Effect is the residual effect of those of us who are holding on to the sword of truth. Those of us who have taken that initial step into the unknown and said, I want to know more. Something's wrong with the world today. I want to figure out what it is. I'd like to know more about it. I would like the answers. I would like to set off on that journey. And so the Mandela Effect manifests itself to individuals who are waking up. And you see something, but you see it for what it is currently in your physical brain. Your brain has been affected. You remember it spiritually. You remember it energetically. That's what the Mandela Effect is, I believe. So, I think that's a good time to wrap things up. I feel like that went quite well. I hope that it made sense. I hope that most of what I was talking about made sense. And I hope that you were able to find something of value in what I've just shared. Feel free to watch this video again, a few times, go over different places or whatnot. Any of my patrons, feel free to talk to me in Patreon and, we can talk about it or whatnot. Also, I'm going to roll the credits. I want to say thank you. I've got so many more patrons now and people who are supporting what I'm doing. This is what I have wanted to do my entire life. People have told me you should be a teacher, you should be a professor, this, that, and the other thing. But I knew that these things that I share, that I teach, that they won't be accepted in the colleges. They won't be accepted in the school systems. This is perfect for me right now to do what I've always wanted to do, which is to share these things with the rest of the world. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all of the people who have shown their support and helped me out by sending me information and the links and videos and books to read and all of the stuff to check out. And of course, everyone on my Patreon page, all of my supporters who help me out. You guys are amazing. I love you all. With that being said, let's roll the credits and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for your time.